really are lucky. Fortunate is the better term. Anyway, so we get done with the clamming. We've had our lunch. You'll probably want to know what I had. Fine. I had a sandwich made of spelt bread, which also is known as dung bread, and then peanut butter and honey. That was the sandwich. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, wait a minute, isn't he vegan and honey is not allowed? Well, first of all, I'm clamming, okay? Get that? So, obviously, I divert slightly from the vegan way of life. And all of that said, to tell you this, I fall asleep on the boat at some point because just sitting there, we're all just sitting there waiting. We're just rested. Clam buckets are filled. Got the mussels we want. The tide is rolling in. Rolling's an exaggeration. The tide is creeping in, and slowly, inch by inch, you see the tide. And we're a good 150 feet from the water's edge, just sitting there in this dry boat, enjoying each other's company. My nephew's from Phoenix, actually from Alaska. They're currently living in Phoenix. But anyway, we're just having a good time. Daughter Zoe, my dad, and I. And the tide's coming in, and I fall asleep. And while I slept, a 42-year-old man named Joseph Hugh Eros passed away in Anchorage in that same tide. He was crossing the mudflats to Fire Island and back during that super low tide, and he got caught in the mudflats, got caught by the tide. It came in, was rising, 12 inches a minute, something to that effect, and he got swept away. His friend made it across, and he died while I napped on board a vessel waiting for the tide to come in and get us. And it's interesting because I was thinking, as I was waiting for I said, what if we had, to myself, I said, imagine we had an emergency, and here's the tide just creeping inch by inch by inch, waiting to float the boat. And I thought, man, that would just be really tragic to have an emergency in this extreme low tide and your boat's dry. And then I read the paper today, the Anchorage Daily News, talking about this 42-year-old man. He was a captain in the Army. He had actually graduated Harvard and then became a JAG attorney for the United States Army. And here's the interesting thing as to why he joined the Army was actually post 9/11, 2001. He said, that's it. He raised his hand and he said, I'm going to do something about this. And so he joined up, and he actually served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so we wish his family all the best, and our prayers and thoughts are with them here at Alaska Matters. And just I'm extremely touched by his service, and very, very, very sorrowful that he lost his life on Sunday during that tide. And it's just a reminder to you and me that this really is a wild, rugged land, and we have to be here in Alaska so very careful in life in general. But here, anything can happen in a moment's notice. Everything's bigger, from the tides to the animals to just everything. So just be very, very careful and cautious, and I wish you all the best in your Alaskan adventures, all of you. And do get out and enjoy the outdoors, but please be careful when you do so. I'm Christopher Story, your host for great adventures in these wild last frontiers we call home. Occupy Prosperity Update. Now, a lot of things happened at the council meeting last night, the Homer City Council meeting here in Homer, Alaska. Those of you listening on AdventureAlaskaRadio.com, and there's actually quite a few of you that do that are not in the Alaskan footprint, and so I appreciate you being there. That's why I preface it by saying Homer, Alaska, in case you should forget. Interesting, and I've got tons and tons of audio that we'll get to. The first thing I want to do and I want to be very careful that I preface all of this by saying this is offered with due respect to Mayor Wyeth. She and I couldn't disagree more on something. Now, when I disagree with Mayor Wyeth, it's not that often, but I want to offer it with all due respect because I do respect the job she's doing. And I got to take issue with this commentary. So let me just set it up by saying this is Mayor Wyeth in the closing moments of this Homer City Council meeting last night. And I'll just explain where and why I disagree in a moment.
Point fingers at anyone as doing less of a job than they hope that they're doing. My invitation to you is if you are that concerned, step up. Elections come around every fall. 2 positions are open every year. If you do not feel that the 6 people sitting at this table or myself are doing the job that you voted them to do, step up and take their place. Don't stand there and point fingers at them because they're doing a bad job.
And that's where I stop there and say, actually, Mayor Wyeth, with all due respect, that is part of the process. Because if we are not allowed to criticize, if we are not allowed to bring to bear our opinion in the public forum, be it on the radio, be it in print, be it at the council chambers during a public hearing or during testifying on for or against an ordinance that's being proposed, a hike in a service fee that is being proposed or maybe has already passed and people are levying commentary regarding that. That, in my opinion, again, with all due respect, Mayor Wyeth, to speak up is to step up. It's when we stay silent. It's when we sit in the shadows and, well, I don't want to say anything. No, I encourage all of you to speak up. To get vocal and act local is as patriotic an event as you can possibly participate in. It's called democracy. We do need to get more vocal. And again, Mayor Wyeth, with all due respect, I couldn't disagree with you more in this. I fundamentally disagree with the idea that to speak up is to just point fingers and blame. It's not. It's part of the process. I must come here each week and tell you exactly what I think and parse through these things. Why? Because it matters. It matters that you and I have this conversation. It's not unilateral. It's not an autocracy. It's not tyranny. It is not despotism. We must be able to speak up and in more ways than simply getting on an elected position, getting on a council or an assembly or a commission. We've got to be able to speak up and speak our minds. That's the bottom line. To speak up is to step up. And I will be penning my thoughts to Mayor Wyeth to this effect, but I wanted to get this out in the open right here and right now. Not pointing fingers. I'm making commentary, and I'm participating in the public process and in the debate and the discourse and keeping it respectful. I hope you appreciate that, and I hope you do the same thing. Okay, so we've got so much more to come. We'll have our Blackwater Bend, Alaskan Mindbender, and much more coming up here on Alaska Matters. Call me maybe unless you want to criticize me. No, I take that too. You don't think I get criticized? You don't think people call me up and say certain things that, hey, I disagree with you about this or that? Of course they do. Sometimes they don't call. Sometimes they write. Sometimes they write emails to the station, and that's okay. By and large, though, a majority of you do agree with what we're talking about here. And so, that's the majority of what we hear at Alaska Matters. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. I want to thank the Anchor River Inn for making this portion of the program possible. Big thanks to the Klutz family and the Anchor River Inn. It's been family-owned and operated for 50 years. They've got a gift shop, great family-style cooking, groceries, lodging, and more. I mean, really the center of activity, the hub of Anchor Point, if you will, the Anchor River Inn. Plus, you can go check out their website. You're wondering what's happening on the Anchor River? Go ahead and go to anchorriverinn.com, anchorriverinn.com, and check out the camera overlooking the Anchor River. It's pretty awesome. So the heart of Anchor Point, Anchor River Inn, 235-8531, 8531. Mike Kennedy lawsuit. Did you read the piece I wrote for the Homer Tribune last week? If you haven't read it, it's still on their website. It's called City Should Drop the Lawsuit by Chris Story, lifelong Alaskan. It's an open letter to the mayor of Homer, Mayor Wyeth, and it was, as I said in the outset of this letter in the paper, it was composed and offered with all sincerity and love of community, and that's the absolute truth. This is not a criticism of any elected official. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's a criticism of an unelected autocracy that is really gripping this community, and it's called strong manager form of government. So I'll be speaking out about this in more detail later, but Occupy Prosperity, our organization, it is a for-profit organization, has taken up the cause of converting our form of government in Homer. And it's a big, big challenge before you and I, but we can do it. You can do this. Strong mayor form of government is what we're proposing versus a strong manager. And the reason is quite simple. With what we have today, we have an unelected body that is running the show, truly running the show. And they're unelected, they're untouchable, unaccountable to a certain respect when it comes to criticism, when it comes to being able to reach out every 2 or 3 years and replace the administration. We've had the same administration for 12 years, and that would be City Manager Walt Reedy. And in a lot of respects, Walt has done a lot of great things. This is not a personal vendetta or any issue with Walt in general. I've observed here the last... Let me tell you this. My first real experience with how Walt runs this city was trying to get and he does run the city. Don't fool yourself. trying to get the Gateway Business District developed here. And simultaneous to that, trying to follow the guidelines of the 1999 Comp Plan Review update. And that called for an expansion of commercial business district both east and west of Homer. And at that time, roughly 7 years ago, Don Blackwell, still in the fight for his own life, his own private property, his own usage of his land that has been paying taxes on for umpteen years, and it's been commercial since 1942. We had a solution. We had a solution that would have solved Don's problems at that moment in time and the problems of any other property owner in that east corridor that is quasi-commercial. It really is, and that's its highest and best use. And the forefathers' wisdom pre-told that, and that was to speak to the 1999 Comp Plan Review, which updated to state that simply east and west hills approximately should be the future site of expansion of the commercial business district zoning in our community. And the city council was about to take that up and go ahead and do an expansion east and west to include our property all the way out here at the corner of West Hill and the Sterling Highway. 1,005 Carriage Court, a little real estate firm here in Homer. And then also, simultaneous to that, look to the East Corridor. And some of the council at the time, I believe it was Councilman Val McClay that was acting as mayor pro tem, and he had suggested that this would be a good expansion east and west, and to Walt said, no, we have an administrative solution to Don's problem. We don't need to do that. You're not going to be solving anything there. And I'm paraphrasing. This is not verbatim, but to that effect, that we have an administrative solution. That's a quote, and we don't need to do anything here. And now it's 7 years, and Don's still waiting. Don's in limbo. Don's in a bit of a purgatory relative to his property, and none of the other large tracts of vacant land have been occupied by commercial spaces in the interim, with the exception of one real estate /home, office /home. And so that's when I really recognized that there's nothing we can do there. As councils come and go, as mayors come and go, one thing remains the same, and it's time for you and I to take a real close look at who's running the city, who is really setting the tone for the community as it pertains to the actual governance of our community. And it's time to take a very close look at the form of government we've got, which is strong mayor, and possibly converting it to, strong manager and converting it to strong mayor. We actually have two attorneys that are members of Occupy Prosperity, our for-profit organization. I love saying that, for-profit organization. And they are actually looking at this and going to be proposing to our next board of directors meeting and making some propositions and how this can be done and actually crafting the initiative. I hope you'll join me. Send your emails to story@xyz.net, for or against. This is where you have an opportunity to speak up, and I'll share, with your permission, share your thoughts on air and or during some sort of a polling going forward. But story@xyz.net, would you support a strong mayor form of government? Now, understand that the current city manager, and I'm not speaking from the budget, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's roughly a six-figure job, between $90,000 and $100,000 and some odd a year when you balance in the benefits and so forth. And I'm suggesting that we take a very strong look at that becoming a mayoral position with a salary, so we end up with something similar to what the Kenai Peninsula Borough has in their form of governance, which is strong mayor. And we have an opportunity to reach out and touch Mayor Navarre, prior to that Williams, prior to that, I was going to say Begich, what's his name? Dale Bagley. They remind me of each other, look a lot alike. Anyway, so I'm just suggesting that we do that. That's the plank of Occupy Prosperity that we are working on at the moment. You're welcome to join us, story@xyz.net. And I sort of brought this up to say this about the Mike Kennedy lawsuit, and we'll get to the rest of the council sound bites in just a little bit, but I want to bring this up and say, okay, we have a manager that is prosecuting the case against Mike Kennedy, as it were, on behalf of you and I. Thus far, I'm told, you and I have spent roughly, round numbers, $25,000 in attorney's fees to basically go after, is what I'm paraphrasing here. This is my version of what's happening to Mike Kennedy, is we're going after him. We're attempting to ruin his life with a $1.86 million fine. Fines of zoning violations. All right, fine. They want to do some sort of settlement and then have the sort of Damocles hanging over his head that if you ever violate the zone again, he's going to owe $186,000. Well, possibly that's even being renegotiated as we speak. The point is, $25,000 in attorney's fees. What will it take for you to pay that? In other words, at 4.5% sales tax, let's just say the city's share of our current sales tax, that'll require roughly $555,000 in sales to generate enough tax dollars to cover that one legal case against Mike Kennedy. What does that mean to you? Well, I own a rental home in the middle of town, and so I looked at it and said, okay, how many years will I pay taxes, property taxes, on that rental home, the city's share of which is $640 a year, total taxation $1,600 a year, city share $640 a year. It'll take me 39 years to pay property taxes, enough to cover the case against Mike Kennedy that could have been, friends, settled a long time ago without attorneys involved. I'm telling you that. You know that. You know that to be true. Those, especially those of you that know Mike, know that that's 100% true. We did not need to expend $25,000 in legal fees, not to mention staff time. $25,000. 39 years, Chris and Tiffany will be paying taxes on our rental home at $640 a year. 39 years. I'm 40 years old. I'll be 80 before that's, I mean, if that's how you want to look at it. What about this? How many gallons of gas? All right. Let's just round numbers down. $4. Let's just say gas is $4 a gallon. City's take on sales tax, 20 cents. 125,000 gallons. 125,000 gallons of gasoline will have to be sold. Now, you're asking yourself, Chris, yeah, those are reasonable figures you've used. I understand those analogies, but what about candy bars? It's the first thing that comes to mind, right? That's the metric by which we measure all things tax. How many candy bars will have to be sold to collect enough sales tax to pay off the legal fees levied against Mike Kennedy and his property and his zoning violation? 18.5 million candy bars will have to be sold. 18.5 million. I'm suggesting, and I'm asking the mayor, and I'm asking the city council to please drop the case against Mike. Let us not spend another dollar in legal fees. Drop it now. Please stop spending our money to prosecute this man. We'll be back with more right here on Alaska Matters. You're listening to Alaska Matters Radio. I'm Christopher Story, along with Dave Webb, back up at the mothership of KGTL. Don't forget, it's on AM 620 now and FM 100. Give you a couple of minutes to get over there if you want to before we get to the really exciting, juicy parts of the council meeting last night. Meanwhile, back at the farm, Blackwater Bend Espresso brings you your Alaskan Mind Bender. You can grab your espresso or mocha or macchiato or latte on the go. Drive through Blackwater Bend today and tell them Chris sent you. With every cup of Blackwater Bend Espresso, you are supporting a small business that operates year-round, putting the people to work in a very vital need. Trust me, when you see the lights of Blackwater Bend on in the middle of the winter, the dead of winter, if you will, you know it's going to be okay. Blackwater Bend Espresso, truly a lifesaver. Gourmet coffee. They've got great popcorn, road food, and giant cinnamon rolls the size of my head. Blackwater Bend Espresso, not your average drip. Here's your question. Now, I will set it up by first playing a clip of Assemblyman Bill Smith presenting to the Homer City Council last night. And when we come back, I will ask you the Blackwater Bend question. So let's cue up Assemblyman Smith now.
The other initiative, which was approved to go out for signature gathering, is to change the deduction for personal property from $20,000 to $50,000. State law was amended this year to allow the maximum exemption for residential properties if you live there up to $50,000. So this initiative intends to put that before the voters.
Well, would you support an increase from $20,000, currently $20,000 exemption on your primary residence from sales property tax? Would you support an initiative that would increase that to $50,000 as an exemption on your primary residence only? Now, primary is underlined. That's where you live year-round. From 20 to 50, it's an informal poll happening now, 299-7653. Enter to win by texting yes or no to 299-7653. Would you support this increased exemption? Your name and answer, yes or no. Would you support the increase in the exemption? Send me the text now, 299-7653. Two of you will be selected to go to the Blackwater Bend Espresso for free. Now, by the way, it's not just one cup. Pat wanted me to remind you, you get a whole coffee card here. This is an entire coffee card. All right? I mean, this isn't just a cup of coffee. Anybody can do that. I can say, hey, you want to win a cup of coffee? No, this is a coffee card. And all you need to do is weigh in with your opinion. I don't want to lead in too much with my opinion. I want to hear yours. 299-7653. Your text only today, please. Text 299-7653, yes or no. Would you support this increased tax exemption? And let's see if we've got time. Yeah, let me just play this then while you're texting in, and many of you are. Thank you. Remember, 2 of you are going to win. Let me just play this second clip of Assemblyman Smith.
And if that happens, then of course it affects all of our taxes. And if you guys feel that, for instance, the city is running pretty lean and you can't afford to take that tax deduction, then you'll have to figure out what to do. There's a couple of alternatives.
All right, a couple of alternatives. Do you think that one of those is going to be presented as reduce expenses? And for example, stop spending so much money to sue people. Let's try this.
Could increase your tax rate.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, he said a couple of options, right? So the first one is to increase your tax rate. So if you and I are going to get to enjoy some sort of an exemption on our primary residence, okay, Assemblyman Smith suggesting the alternative to that would just be to raise everybody's taxes. But he gave 2 alternatives, right? He said there's a couple of options. Maybe the second one is to actually reduce expenses.
To make up for that tax loss, which would actually, for larger homes, it would increase the taxes, but it would definitely increase the taxes for businesses, which all pay the same rate. Everybody pays the same mill rate.
No. He never ever did get to any sort of cutting expenses. I don't think that's an option. I think statutorily we're not allowed to cut expenses. There just isn't. There just absolutely is no way to cut expenses. You just got to raise taxes. That's all there is to it. In fact, my friend John Calhoun, he's a recovering politician. He was mayor 2 or 3 times. He is the keeper of odd dollars. You're right, Dave. And so he did actually say it's a shell game. That's exactly what he predicted. If in fact the exemption does go from $20,000 to $50,000, they're going to get it from somewhere. We need to be informed about that. So Assemblyman Smith is doing nothing but just telling the truth. The honest to God's truth is the way he sees it is that cutting expenses is not really the option or the problem. It's not the objective. It's to raise taxes, raise enough revenue to do whatever they would like to do. And I am stepping up by saying that. I am speaking up and stepping up, and I'm encouraging you to do the same thing. Would you please enter the contest right now for the Blackwater Bend Espresso Mind Bender? Would you support raising the exemption from $20,000 to $50,000? And as Assemblyman Smith said just then, it will raise taxes elsewhere, but let's just talk in the moment. Would you support this if an initiative is before you in the ballot? Would you support it? Text me now, 299-7653, 299-7653. We've got Holistic Chicks Healthy Living segment coming up. Karin Marks will bring you out and about here in Alaska in the second half of The Greatest Show on Earth, and tons more sound bites from last night's meeting. It got interesting. There's a couple of heated moments that I'll share with you, and several more Assemblyman Smith clips. I can't help myself. And is Bo Burgess for sale? Is Councilman Bo Burgess for sale? Is he asking for a bribe, or is he suggesting you want a bribe? Well, you'll find all that out more here on what my mom calls the greatest show on earth, Alaska Matters. Yeah, man. Power to the people. Where is our counterculture revolution? Where are the people that that at one point in time stood up and said no and questioned authority? You're not allowed to anymore. Voltaire said, to find out who controls you, learn who you are not allowed to criticize. That's very telling. I brought some criticism to bear on a particular party inside the Planning and Zoning Department. That would be the Code Enforcement Officer. Get hate mail from her husband. And it's like, wait a minute. I'm just doing my job to be a public critic, and that is one who observes things in the public and then says, actually, this is how I feel about that. And that's okay. Don't be afraid of it. Now, I spoke to the mayor, Mayor Wyeth, about a month ago or so, and she had mentioned to me that only about 3 or 4 people prior to my phone call had called to express any concerns or even discuss issues with her, and she was surprised by that. And I say that is stepping up. To speak up is to step up. Pick up the phone, call Mayor Wyeth, let her know how you feel. Maybe you feel a certain way about the water and sewer rates. Maybe you feel a certain way about plastic bags being banned and there not being any enforcement component in that piece of legislation, which makes it a piece of and maybe the city violating their own zoning ordinances relative to the marine industrial. A lot of discussion going on around the marine industrial property that the Pier 1 Theater now occupies and has since 1985, I believe, and whether or not future uses of that property would comply with the zone. It doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter whether you comply with the marine industrial zone or not. They, and at least to Mike Yurkowski, former city councilman on the Spit, he does lease a half an acre. Was it a quarter acre or half an acre? I think it's a half an acre out there. And he leases it for purposes that are expressly to contradict the allowed usage within the zone, within marine industrial. And it's not his fault. That's just, hey, that's the cards that he was dealt when he leased the property. The lease from the city of Homer mandates that he violate the marine industrial zone. So I say if you own or you are on any piece, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And these are the kinds of things that I bring up to the mayor when I contact her. These are the kinds of things that I bring up here on Alaska Matters and that you and I really do need to be paying attention about, because it is absolutely fundamentally our job and our responsibility as a citizen to say these kinds of things and to speak out and come to the council meetings prepared to discuss them, come to the committee meetings, the commission meetings, and actually say how you feel without fear of reprisal, without fear of being lectured for having a different opinion. That's my opinion, and I like to share my opinion with you. Now, okay, so the question before us is, well, there's 2 questions. One, are you going to join me and the other members of the for-profit group Occupy Prosperity and request and do the work that it'll need to get an initiative together to convert the form of government and the form of governance we impose on ourselves from strong manager to strong mayor? Are you going to support that? Story at XYZ.net, story at xyz.net. Please weigh in that conversation as it unfolds over the coming weeks and months ahead. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get confusing. It's going to get complex. But we've got attorneys in the wings. We've got people working with us that are preparing and helping us devise this initiative. And so I think it's actually going to come to fruition. I have no doubt in that. I've made up my mind. That's just what I think needs to happen. And so I have no doubt it will happen because of you. And I think that you'll see the wisdom in it. The other question at hand, the one that will actually win you a prize today, enter to win, would you support increasing the exemption from $20,000 to $50,000 on your primary residence here in Homer, 2997, anywhere on the peninsula, but it was being discussed last night in the context of how it would impact the Homer City budget. 299-7653. Enter our informal poll right now. Yes or no? I'm not going to judge or criticize. Yes or no? 299-7653. And Bill went on here to target seniors. Let's check that out.
For senior exemptions right now, the way the borough administers it, within the cities, of course, you guys have $150,000 exemption for senior properties, but in the borough as a whole, from borough taxes, the exemption for senior is $300,000. Well, it actually, there's an adder to that, which is that not only do you get the $300,000, but you get another $20,000 for the personal property exemption, which I don't think, I know the voters voted on the $300,000 exemption, and it doesn't seem to me that the $300,000 plus $20,000 was what they voted on. So one possibility for the borough, in order to keep the books balanced, if we extend $50,000 exemption to all homeowners, as it were, that we could limit the senior exemption to the $300,000, because we have a significant number of seniors. So there's different options that will be on the table as this process goes forward.
As I recall it. And we've got somebody looking into this right now. As I recall, though, it was not an initiative on the ballot that actually capped the exemption to $300,000 in the borough for seniors. It's actually statutorily $150,000 mandatory exemption for senior citizens. And inside the borough, anywhere inside the borough outside of incorporated cities, there was no limit. Mayor Williams, KPB Mayor Williams, reversed that and said, actually, we need the extra money, so what's going to happen is we're going to cap it at $300,000. And then, of course, the presumption being if it's your primary residence, then you'd be at $320,000 total exemption. I'm going to take issue with that. And before I say that Assemblyman Smith is absolutely wrong on his recollection that the people voted on the $300,000, we'll get the facts before us. But I don't recall there ever being a vote on it. I do recall it being that it was just the way Mayor Williams with his chief of staff. Who was his chief of staff? That's right. Oh, it was Tim Navarre. And they deemed it necessary to bring that forward, that there be, I think it was Tim Navarre. Yeah, 99% sure it was Mike's brother, Tim Navarre. And they came down and spoke before our realtor group. And I remember Tim Navarre saying, well, if seniors can't afford it, they can always sell. And so I don't recall there actually being a vote on that. But I just do not want to see seniors impacted. So if we do increase it, I think that maybe is a veiled threat that if you increase this to from 20 to 50, hey, seniors, hi, seniors, look out, you're in trouble. We're coming after you. Yeah, the people on the fixed incomes, exactly. The people that don't compete for the jobs, don't have kids in the schools, they just contribute, built this community. Those are the people that we're targeting. Now, let's move on to water and sewer rates, because this is where things got interesting. And if you've not been paying attention, don't flog yourself. There really is so many moving pieces to this. I don't know that any one person really understands what is at stake here, what is happening, what the goal, what the cause, what the effect is going to be of anything that's happening relative to the water and sewer rates in the city of Homer. For example, it wasn't that many years ago that just overnight, willy-nilly, the rates went from residential to commercial if you owned a multifamily unit. By the way, that started at a duplex. Even if you lived in half of it, you were now considered commercial. Well, okay, enough people screamed about that they said, all right, fine, it starts at a triplex. Then about a year ago, they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a big boon and a big favor to you people that own these multifamily units. We're going to drop you back down to a residential rate. Oh, but by the way, those little pockets of income that we see in those windows, I know you call them apartments, but we see them opportunity to bilk you. Those now just became worth $45 per unit per month because we found a quote unquote loophole that allows us to assess you $45 per unit, even though there's only one meter, one bill, and one customer. We can increase the customer charge tenfold, say, for example, if you have a 10-plex. So anyway, it's been a moving target. Now they're looking to move that back down to $5 per, not back down, excuse me, move it down to $5. Nothing existed before. Now it'll be moved to $5 and yet stay at a residential rate. I don't know that apartment owners have a big beef with this, other than to say it does open the door for future increases of said fee from 5 back to 45. So it is potentially a slippery slope. Here's what I don't understand. How is this such a moving target, even up to an hour and a half before the meeting? Here is Mayor Morris of Kachemak City.
I am going to need some cover so that we can explain to everybody. Right now, it appears to me we're looking at about a 22% increase, which is a lot better than 50%, which is what it was an hour and a half ago.
What? How is it? Are you kidding me? They're about to vote on this, and an hour and a half later, the rates that Kachemak City is going to be paying go from 50% increase to 22%. How is that possible? I mean, well, let's hear what Josh Garvey's got to say. He is the CFO of Land's End Resort, and Land's End owner John Faulkner and Josh Garvey and Michael Dye and others that are involved in senior management and more. They even had a chef show up last night to testify. Been very knowledgeable, educated, and are attempting to communicate with the council what they'd like to see. Now, here's Josh Garvey.
Just 2 hours ago in our work session, the mayor of Kachemak City was alluding to, you just discovered that the numbers you used to base this whole model off of were around $250,000 off.
What? What?
And yet we're still considering voting on this model tonight. And at the very least, I think discovering that information requires a post.
Yeah, a postponement. Agreed. All right. Well, what exactly does Josh think is happening here?
This water and sewer rate increase, I know you guys worked really hard, and I do appreciate all the effort I've seen put into it, but it's really nothing more than an anti-business policy. It's trying to masquerade as something that is fair and equitable. But it's really just a way of taking money from the business community and redistributing it to overinflated budgets.
Okay, sure, Josh Garvey. You're the CFO of Land's End Resort. You have self-interest here. But do other business owners agree? And are they impacted by the water and sewer rates? Come on, really?
But I just remember several years ago when I was looking through my books and realized suddenly that my water and sewer rates had gone up 100% in 1 year. And I was just astounded. And so, I do the numbers and that kind of thing. And I'm looking at my, cost per room at being, 7%. And went, wow, I'm really going to have to raise my rates here. And I'm going to have to lay off a person. I mean, it went up 100%, like $13,000 in 1 year.
Oh, I guess Josh was right. So I guess this wasn't as self-serving as I thought it was. All right, don't go anywhere. We'll answer the Blackwater Bend Mind Bender, the Alaskan Mind Bender, and tell you who are our two winners and what the poll results yielded, and more sound bites from last night's council meeting here on Alaska Matters. You're listening to Alaska Matters Radio. I'm Christopher Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. Miss any portion of this program or just want to share it with a family, a little bit of a civics lesson? Feel free. AdventureAlaskaRadio.com. AdventureAlaskaRadio.com. Also, wanted to tell you something. I said this last week. I'm going to say it again. I don't remember actually if it was on this program or Radio Realty. Sometimes they converge in my mind. But I wanted to say again and reiterate how much I and my wife, Tiffany, appreciate what Girl State meant to our daughter, Zoe. And that was brought to us and made available to Zoe by the American Legion, the auxiliary post here in Homer. And without their support, without their putting this program on statewide, and girls from all over the state come together, they converged in Wasilla at a camp on a lake, which just sounds idyllic, and it was. But not only that, Zoe said something that I thought was really interesting. And she grew up in a very conservative, is growing up in a very conservative, involved household. I mean, we sit around the dinner table at any given time, and we are discussing, we're debating, we have discourse. And Zoe doesn't always agree with what her mother and I say, and she is an individual, and we respect that. What she came away from Girl State with was an incredible, massive respect for her job as a citizen. In other words, a citizen of these United States is to be active. You must be active to be doing the job that your forefathers fought and died for, and to respect the flag and for which it stands. One country under God and indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That means something more than it's just time to stand up and wait for the game to start or to the meeting to start. It really, honest to God, means something. And Zoe came away feeling very proud of her country and being an active citizen. And the piece of legislation that she proposed at Girl State, which is what they do, they form a Senate, they form a House, and they negotiate, and they lobby back and forth, and they propose, and they debate, and they learn a healthy respect for the process. Part of the process is speaking up and speaking your mind, and that's what we do here together every single week on Alaska Matters. Your participation is appreciated. There's eloquence among us. Say, for example, Josh Garvey speaks incredibly well on behalf of Land's End and is the CFO of Land's End. Well, that's fine and dandy. You don't have to speak that well to get out and use your voice. Write a letter, write an email, get in touch with people excuse me, like Bo Burgess, and let's just hear what he had to say about the water and sewer rates last night.
At this point, most of the objections I'm hearing are objections relating to one group of people wanting to shift costs to another group of people, and that goes.
Hang on a second. He's suggesting that anybody criticizing this simply is trying to shift costs away from themselves and divide. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what he's doing here.
Goes against the fundamental inclination of the ordinance in the first place, which is cost causer, cost payer. A gallon of water is a gallon of water. Whether
well, wait a minute, Bo. If that's the case, then if cost causer, cost payer, tell me what the cost of doing business changed. How did the cost of doing business change when last year there was no fee on individual apartments just to exist, and now there is one, $45 per month. I own a duplex. I have to go and and talk to the finance department, and she's wonderful. It makes it very easy, but it's a waste of time, of everybody's time, because I have a vacant unit. So I only get charged half of the second fee for the water and sewer when there's nobody living in the unit. There's one meter, one customer. It's me. I pay the bill. Have two tenants potentially down the road. Right now I have one. When we do have two, we'll be going back to a full $90 per month. Tell me, young Bo, how did we do anything to cost more to the city just by existing, having a unit that exists?
You're a business, a little old lady, or doesn't matter who you are.
Little old lady.
You pay the same for that commodity.
All right, not true. And Barbara Howard is a friend of mine, and she actually, I think, was out of line here. And I'll tell her that myself. But listen to what Barbara Howard has to say to Land's End.
One thing for sure, when we're talking about sewer and water, Land's End is never happy. End of subject.
No, Barb, that's not the end of the subject. If you paid them per gallon to take the water, they'd be happy. That's a little bit of a joke. But seriously, I don't think that's the case. I think they're frustrated, Barb. That's what I'd tell you. I think they're frustrated with last-minute changes such that $250,000 extra was discovered at the last minute, and then here's a council that's about to vote on it. I believe that's the problem. I honestly don't think that they're just simply, now obviously every for-profit business has to look out for the bottom line, and Barb's a business person. I know she knows that. I think it's been a frustrating process, and Bo Burgess did go on later to say he'd like to get the politics out of setting the water and sewer rates. Great, I agree. Then get a task force that is objective and not inclusive of any politicians. That's something that could be looked at. Now, here's his explanation, Bo Burgess' explanation of the discrepancy.
We use the operating flows from lift stations to set that rate. It turns out that the actual billable flows, our new finance director noticed the discrepancy, and it's to his credit that he brought the discrepancy to our attention. Our previous finance director was probably too overworked to find that.
9 months of a task force. A new person, new eyes, fresh eyes, non-political eyes comes in and finds a $250,000 discrepancy, and you don't see the problem with that?
Probably because I have a big mouth and a propensity to constantly say how I see things. They decided to throw me under the bus and put me on this task force. But we worked really hard on this. A lot of information went into it. The information we relied on was actually the same information that a contractor or a private rate setter would have relied on, because that was information provided by city staff. So this argument that we keep hearing about why don't we hire professionals to do this, I fail to see how, once we accept the fundamental tenets of a commodity-based system, I fail to see how a private contractor or another body could have done a better job, unless, of course, that private body had been slipped money by a large special interest organization to come to a different conclusion than what the Citizens Task Force did.
Whoa, what? Oh, that's a veiled, not so veiled way of saying that if John Faulkner were to bribe somebody, why would he bring up bribes?
My last point, which is pressure from outside sources. I wish Instar or some other private group had come up to me and offered me tons of money to bring this resolution forward. But I can tell you, they did not. I wish Instar or some other private group had come up to me and offered me tons of money to bring this resolution forward.
Well, they did not. We'll discuss this in further detail on the other side of this break here on Alaska Matters. Well, what do you think? Would you support the minimum wage being tied to an annual adjustment for inflation? Minimum wage going on the rise as of January 1, 2016 could be as high as $9.75. If an initiative that will be on the ballot passes, it will increase, let's see here, from $8.75 to $9.75, and then thereafter be tied to an annual review and adjusted for inflation. Milton Friedman is rolling in his grave. I wonder what Alaskans are going to do there. All right, Les and Carol are our two winners, and we did a little tallying during that last break, and in fact, 19 to 1. 19, yes, they would support a $20,000 to $50,000 exemption increase. 1, no. Do you want to know why the person said no? They're just going to get the money from somewhere else. They're just, and I know that's a sad reality, and it's probably true. Not going to be looking at reducing expenses. We just know that. That's the case. Now, I'm not picking on Assemblyman Smith, but he gave a lot of commentary last night at the city council meeting, and this next statement bothered me to no end because it speaks to an attempt to centralize so much of your life and take it away from the democracy that you and I actually rely on. And so give a listen to this.
Last year, there was a proposal to make the service areas have all appointed seats rather than elected seats. And most of the service areas were very much opposed to that. But as we looked at that issue, it became apparent to me that something like over 95% of the service area seats are filled by self-appointment. That is, someone will put their name down to run for the seat, and there will be no competition.
All right, I can't take it anymore. What he goes on to say is simply that because of that somebody self-appoints, quote unquote, self-appoints themselves by being unopposed, well, we might as well let then the other bodies or governing agencies then appoint somebody or put them through the appointment process, because maybe that person that decided to run unopposed isn't really the person we want, and they're just self-appointing. No, Bill, that's not how. That's called the process. If only one person steps up, quote unquote, steps up, why punish them and put them through a punitive appointment process versus allowing the people to make a decision? And I'll tell you, you need look no further than Senator Lisa Murkowski's write-in bid. If somebody wanted to launch a write-in campaign because only one person stepped up to run for an office or for a board, that's not self-appointment. If nobody decides to do a write-in campaign or oppose them, that's called the process. And I argue 100% against centralizing that and putting it into the hands of an unelected body or an unelected bureaucrat or an elected bureaucrat. I want to let the people decide. Power to the people. That's how we open the program, and that's really what it needs to stay. So last night, the water and sewer, back to the council meeting as it pertains to the water and sewer rates, it was voted down. So in other words, as the rates exist today, is how they shall remain. They voted down the new ordinance, the draft ordinance that would have changed things around relative to fees on apartments and water rates and lift station rates, et cetera. And then David Lewis called for reconsideration, so it may come back. Well, no, it will come back at the next regular city council meeting, and they'll take up the issue once again. Missing from last night's action was Councilman Dolma, and so I think David Lewis wanted a full body there and see if full group and see if they could gain enough support or just get further information. Anyway, power to the people. I mean, this is an interesting process. I enjoy it immensely. I hope you do too. If you're listening to the program, you must. Unfortunately, so many sound bites had to be played. We didn't get an opportunity to run either our Holistic Chicks Healthy Living segment or the Karl Marx Out and About segment. I'll air both of those tomorrow on Radio Realty, which leads me to invite you then to 102 FM, Radio Realty, heard Wednesdays at 12:30 to 1:30. And we'll be discussing tomorrow, don't forget, our millionaire plan, how to become a millionaire in your own backyard. Yes, you really can, with real estate, become a millionaire in your own backyard. A millionaire. I mean, look at Michael Kennedy. He's practically a millionaire. He's getting $1.86 million from the city. Oh, no, that's right. They're suing him for $1.86 million. See, somebody's becoming a millionaire. And so anyway, tomorrow's going to be a terrific program. We'll have Rhonda Johnson with our Mortgage Moment. We're going to be talking about how you can use other people's money in a good way, in a safe way, in an educated way to make $1 million in your own backyard. Anyone can do it, and it's never too late. I'll be sharing a story of one of my early real estate mentors who started at age 55. Age 55. Anything can be accomplished when you set your mind to it. And I hope that you'll enjoy, come back and enjoy this program at VentureAlaskaRadio.com anytime you choose. Also, please weigh in, story@xyz.net. Would you support the conversion of our current form of governance from strong manager to strong mayor, whereby you and I can elect the person in charge of the community? Thank you, David Webb. Thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors, and thank you for listening to what my mom calls the greatest show on earth. It really is. It really is an awesome show. Hey, catch you later. Go out there in Alaska and enjoy the last frontier.